Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and today we are continuing on with our hearing series, and we're going to be discussing hearing issues as we age. I have Shawna Bohn here with me today. She is a TMC audiologist, and we are doing a lot of things with adults now. I know we've always had a pediatric program, Shawna, and I understand now we have an adult program that's going on. So this is really great timing for everyone. So I just wanted to welcome you here today and learn more about your program and learn more about, issues that people might experience as they age.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, I've been at TMC actually for a total of 17 years, not all at one time. But I am a homegrown Tucsonan, actually born at TMC. So I am very proud to be working for this not-for-profit community hospital, and they do such a great job at providing all kinds of health care and wellness programs for our community. So Tucson Medical Center Audiology, actually we've been fitting hearing aids and doing adult audiological evaluations since, for a long time. It's just that we're trying to build it a little bit bigger. When I came back in 2012, I have been seeing adults and the pediatrics at the same time. So it's been, a slow growing program. But now that we are expanded, we have a new beautiful space at the atrium at 5099 East Grant Road. We have the ability to hire more audiologists and really get our program up and running and going a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah, it was a great space. I have seen it, and it's quite impressive. So
yes,
yeah.
Yes. So I graduated from Gallaudet University in '87, and then I got my doctoral degree in 2007 from Salus University. Been working here at TMC since 2012, but I did put in about 8 years prior to that, a few years before. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about statistics before I get going on the topics. About 15% of the adult population have hearing loss, and 25% of those people are over 65 years of age. 1/3 of these people have what we consider a disabling hearing loss. And disabling hearing loss refers to hearing loss that's greater than 40 dB in the better hearing ear. So that is kind of in that mild hearing loss range. So we're going to talk a little bit then today about how we hear, the types of hearing loss, levels of hearing loss, what you need to do or what happens when you get the hearing test. Hearing aids and the way that they've changed over the years. We'll talk a little bit about some communication strategies, rehab options, and then community resources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of the ear. It's always easier to talk about the anatomy of the ear when we can see a picture of it. And so this picture really shows, we have three parts. We have the outer ear, we have the middle ear that consists of the eardrum, the middle ear bones, and then an air-filled space. And then we have the inner ear, which encloses our cochlea, our inner, the balance portion of our brain, and then it heads out into the auditory nerve. Hearing happens by sound coming into our ear, hitting our eardrum, and then the eardrum vibrates and passes that vibration along that chain of those three little bones. That third little bone then pushes fluid into the cochlea, and the cochlea has little hair cells in there, which we can also refer to as nerve cells. But those little hair cells then are stimulated, and that's depending on the frequency, then it sends it through the auditory nerve up to our brain. Okay. The cochlea is a pitch place theory is what we call it, but at the very entrance of that cochlea, the very first hair cells are for high frequencies. And as it works to the center of that snail-shaped object there, it goes to lower and lower frequencies. So let me just get to the next thing. So if we look at this picture, we have several different types of hearing loss. We have a conductive hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss, and mixed. So what happens is if the hearing problem is due to our middle ear, either the eardrum, the three little bones, or maybe there's fluid in the space that should be air-filled, or there could be earwax in the ear canal, anything that's preventing sound from getting through the conductive part of the hearing loss would be considered conductive. Then once we get, if everything's normal in that middle ear part and we still have hearing loss, then we possibly could have sensory neural hearing loss, meaning that the little hair cells may be a little bit damaged, and that can vary in degree. If there's a little mixture of both, then we consider it a mixed hearing loss. Let's see here. The middle ear conducts the sound into the ear. Let's see here, let me just see. So I've already talked about that. Okay, so one of the analogies I like to make with the cochlea and the little hair cells is if we think of those little hair cells as a patch of grass, and we walk across that patch of grass constantly in the same place, we usually end up with like a little bald spot or a little pathway. And so that's kind of what happens in our cochlea. So over our lifetime, being exposed to noise, being exposed to different things, those hair cells can get trampled, and eventually they lose the ability to produce the sound, and so that's then leads to the hearing loss. That's even more, even with noise-induced hearing loss, the high frequencies tend to get affected more because of the fact that sound has to go across those high frequencies at the entrance of the cochlea to get to the lower frequency hair cells, and so they get trampled on even more so. So types of hearing loss, just to kind of give you a visual way of looking at it. So normal hearing, you see the picture on the left, it's a beautiful red bird. If you have a conductive hearing loss, it's just that everything is softer or it may be more muffled. But if you have a sensory neural hearing loss, it's softer, but it's also distorted. And so that distortion comes from the damage to the hair cells. So here's, we're again talking about conductive sensory neural or mixed hearing loss. Then we talk about a little bit about the severity of hearing loss. How loud does the sound need to be before you hear it? Mild, moderate, severe, profound. And then the configuration based on what frequencies or pitches are affected by the hearing loss. So I'm going to show you, this is what's called an audiogram. And the audiogram is how we plot hearing and hearing loss. And this is what we actually develop when we do the hearing test. So across the horizontal crossways is the frequency of all the beeps that we present to you. And then the vertical line is the volume, and that's measured in decibels or dB. So at the top is the very soft sounds, and at the very bottom at 120, that would be very loud. So 125 hertz is very low frequency, going out to 8,000, which is very high frequency. So this audiogram here shows the right ear in the red O's and the left ear in the blue X's. And essentially, this is kind of a typical hearing loss of aging, where we have some normal hearing in the lower pitches, and then we have a gradual loss for the mid to the high pitches. This is another audiogram that kind of shows then the speech banana. We refer to that because it looks like a banana, but essentially that's where all the speech sounds occur when we speak at a normal conversational level of about 50 dB. And so you can see, if you think about overlaying that hearing loss before, on the slide before, that there's going to be sounds out there in those high frequencies, specifically the FS, the TH, the K, the sh sounds, that person may not be able to hear. So they're hearing those low frequency sounds, and those low frequency sounds provide loudness. But the common thing that we hear from people that have aging hearing loss is that I hear people talking, but I can't understand what they're saying. And that is because they're missing those high frequency consonant sounds that provide the intelligibility of our speech. So hearing loss with aging, we refer to it as presbycusis. So similar to like when, as we get older and we need to use readers, we have what we call presbyopia, and we have to have a longer arm or get magnification to see smaller print. The same thing happens with aging in our ears, and so that's called presbycusis. It does typically affect the high pitches first, and the severity can be different for everyone, but it is typically a sensory neural hearing loss. Noise-induced hearing losses can compound with the presbycusis. They would also be a sensory neural hearing loss. And that's people who've been exposed, you know, maybe they spent some years in the military, used firearms as, you know, hunters, worked around loud equipment, construction workers using loud equipment, especially if they didn't try to protect their hearing with hearing protection. Getting your hearing checked, you know, going to see an audiologist is the best thing to do if you are starting to notice some issues. Audiology today is a little bit different profession than it was when I first entered. It was a master's degree level of entry, but now it has become a doctoring profession. And so most audiologists out there have gone through a 4-year doctoral program to be trained to manage, test and manage hearing loss and balance issues. During the evaluation, we'll take a visual check of your ears. So we check the ear canals, make sure there's no earwax or anything like that. Look at the eardrums, make sure that they look healthy. And then we will do some middle ear testing as well. I didn't list that here, but middle ear testing, which we do use a little machine, and we call it impedance, but we are looking at how the eardrum moves, and then we can also measure the function of some little, the 7th and 8th nerves to make sure everything there is working well. Then we put you in a little quiet booth, and we would start with some words, present some words to you and see how well you can repeat them back. And then we ask you to listen for those tones, and then that's how we develop that audiogram that you saw earlier. Typically, right after the testing, we are able to counsel you on what we found, describe your hearing loss, talk a little bit about some of the options that are available in regards to amplification or assistive devices, or maybe even just using some communication strategies if you're not quite a hearing aid candidate yet. There are plenty of, you know, other than TMC, there are other audiology practices throughout Tucson area. So, you know, you can look up other audiology practices. So hearing aids have come a long way. I'm going to go to that. They amplify sounds to volume that your ear can detect. But today, hearing aids are a lot more sophisticated than, you know, what your grandmother might have had 50 years ago. So basically, they are like little computers now, and they come, you know, where we can actually program them to your hearing loss and how you listen. We can adjust them, if your hearing does change, they're very easy to reprogram and turn up, things like that. Most hearing aids these days are directional, meaning that if you are in a quiet room, it's going to be picking up everything all around you. But if you go into a noisy environment, it will go into a directional mode. And most hearing aids come with an automatic program that allows it to adjust depending on what listening environment you are in. There are several different styles of hearing aids. This happens to be a picture of one manufacturer, but there are the in-the-ear styles on the right there. And then in the middle there, you'll see some behind-the-ear hearing aids with little wires. Those are called RICs, or receiver in the canal, which tends to be the most popular hearing aid nowadays, because you can wear a small behind the ear with a little wire that goes down in your ear canal with a little, either a dome, or if your hearing loss requires it, you may need a custom ear mold. Here's another picture of some other hearing aids. And then the other thing that's really great about amplification these days is that now they have the ability to connect to your smartphones. We can download applications on your smartphone, and it can either adjust the volume, change your programs, or even some of the programs now allow you to kind of even use an equalizer to change the response of your hearing aid in different listening situations that might sound better for you. We fit hearing aids at TMC. Hearing aids are expensive, and so that sometimes can be a limitation in regards to what you're able to do. There is an organization here in town called Grace Hearing, and they do, you would have to apply, and they have a sliding scale for the cost of the hearing aids. But the interesting thing that they have also added was asking people to do a certain number of community service hours to also help with the cost of the hearing aids. And it's just a great program to allow people to kind of just, work a little bit for getting their hearing aids. The Pima County Hearing Aid Bank is administered through the Community Outreach Program for the Deaf. And again, it is also an application process. And if you are eligible for that program financially, then the services are provided at the University of Arizona Hearing Clinic. There are some Medicare Advantage plans that have hearing aid benefits now, and so it is a good idea for you to check your plan prior to getting your hearing tested to see, is there a hearing aid benefit? If I do need hearing aids, what does it provide? And some of them, some of the insurance programs have specific places that you have to go. So a couple of examples would be United Healthcare has what they call Epic Hearing, or United Healthcare Hearing, and it is just a branch of their insurance program. And there's certain providers in the area that will work with that. There's another organization called True Hearing, and there's certain organizations that work with that particular program. So just depending on what your insurance, who they contract with, you would need to know that information prior to getting the hearing aids. Some of the benefits actually provide a dollar amount, and they will give you that dollar amount. And so sometimes you can fit the hearing aids into a certain level of, value. And then there's other programs that just offer what they consider a discount. So they have some hearing aids, or they might have like a level of technology that they provide at a certain discounted price to the patient with that plan. Medicare alone does not cover hearing aids. Usually Medicare even only covers one hearing exam, and that's usually when you first get into Medicare. They'll cover that first hearing exam to just to rule out hearing loss, or as an entry level of their program. There are lots of little different devices that can work in addition to hearing aids. One of the things that I do recommend a lot of times for some people are the amplified telephone captioning telephones. So that's a free program. We have a program here in Arizona. It is funded by taxpayers, but essentially if you have a hearing loss and you can be certified as having a hearing loss, you are eligible to receive a captioning phone. There's several different companies here in town that provide those phones, and so you would just need to talk to your audiologist about getting you signed up to get one. They would come to your home, and they would actually put the telephone in your home and hook it up and teach you how to use it. There are also some TV listening systems. Some people probably already use some of these kinds of things, but with the newer hearing aids, there's also devices that you can get through the manufacturers of the hearing aid that you have that will also help you connect to your television. The other thing that most, the hearing aids are also sometimes Wi-Fi availability and Bluetooth connectivity. And so sometimes people who have Bluetooth connectivity to their televisions can even, connect their hearing aids via that way. Let's see. There's an organization also here in town called Adult Loss of Hearing Association. They're located over off of Fort Lowell, and it's a house. They've been there for many, many years, but they are an organization that actually provides support to people with hearing loss. They also have device demonstrations. So there's a lot of people in that organization that have had hearing loss for many, many years, worn hearing aids for many years, and have a lot of experience. And it's a great place for new hearing aid users to go and kind of get some advice and different ways of connecting to different devices so that you can enhance your communication style wherever, in whatever very difficult listening situations that you may encounter in your life. Using hearing aids and AODs can have a very positive impact, but simple communication strategies make a big difference too. And I want to make a quick statement here too. The sooner that you do get hearing aids, the better off you will be at using devices. Some people, like at the beginning, I talked about a disabling hearing loss being of 40 dB, which would be considered, a mild hearing loss. But that can be disabling for a lot of people in the sense that if you can't hear well, a lot of times people will start to withdraw from society. They will withdraw from family gatherings because they feel like they're sitting there and instead of asking people to repeat, they just sit back and just kind of smile and nod their head. And that can be, very detrimental to you as you age. The untreated hearing loss, there are some studies out there that suggest that it can contribute to, dementia or, some memory issue things. But it may be not necessarily the memory issue, but it may be that you just didn't hear something correctly. And so people think, oh, they said something that didn't fit with what we were talking about, but it's just because they didn't hear what they were saying. And so they made a guess, and that guess might have been way off the mark. So it's important to get treatment sooner than later. And so using, hearing devices and trying to figure out a way to hear better in those listening situations is very, very important. Who should get a hearing test? One of the things that you If you find yourself asking, people to repeat often, you're having trouble following conversations with family, saying people just don't speak clearly anymore. They're talking, like with their mouths not moving, mumbling, trouble hearing in noise, or that your television is up so loud that it's really uncomfortable for other people around you. So those are all reasons to get your hearing tested and see whether or not you would be a candidate for amplification. If your hearing, is, a little bit down, but maybe, the cost of hearing aids is, way out of your ability to, achieve, using some communication strategies also is very, very helpful. It does take work, and a lot of times the first people that will notice you have a hearing problem would be your family or your spouse. And one of the problems that we have with our spouses is we get into bad communication styles with them, and we try to talk to each other from across the house. We got our head in the refrigerator, the water's running, the washing machine's on, the television's playing, and we're trying to talk to each other, and we can't hear each other. So typically, like when you get together with friends or something like that, you go and you sit down and you have coffee or tea or whatever, and you're sitting right in front of each other, and it's a little bit easier to communicate that way. So sometimes we just need to focus better, on those communication strategies and get back to using, better communication styles, even with our family and spouses. A lot of times visual cues, a lot of people don't feel that they can lip read or speech read. But if we're getting some auditory input and we're talking to somebody face to face, usually you can fill in the blanks of things that you're not hearing with what you see on that person's face. And so it's really important that people have visual cues of people when they're talking. And a lot of times on this last one here, remember, most hearing losses in older adults involve problems with clarity, but not just volume. So it's important that people don't go up into someone's ear and just scream louder or anything like that. If you were to sit right in front of somebody who's very hard of hearing that does not have amplification, or even if they do have amplification and they still have trouble hearing, it's really important that you let them see you when you're talking, and use a stern and slow speech, but speak loudly and clearly. Whenever possible, try to be in the same room and facing your communication partner. We call it walk before you talk. Assert yourself. Many people do. They will withdraw and just sit back and nod their head. And so when you are having difficulty, just be assertive and just say, hey, I have a little hearing problem. Could you speak up a little bit? Or could you, look at me when you're talking to me? Or get my attention before talking. And then that way, essentially, you may be able to enhance your ability to understand better. Have realistic expectations. Even with hearing aids, you're not going to hear perfectly. The hearing aids are an aid to hear, and they do bring in more sound so that you can make better educated guesses about certain things that you still may miss. But depending on the degree of your hearing loss, hearing aids still may not be able to give you everything that you need, but they are definitely helpful to help you get better communication. And again, just, some will just talk louder, but slower and clearer is more useful. And just educating, people that you're with of how you need them to communicate with you. Speaker factors. Some people like to speak very quickly. Some people who have facial hair or, are talking and they've got their hand in front of their face, things like that. Some of those things will make it difficult for you to hear. Listening factors, just not paying attention. I think even today, a lot of times people find that we're distracted by so many things. It could be social media. We could be looking at our phone. Someone's talking to us and we don't hear it until halfway through, and then we have to ask them to repeat. So just paying attention, and trying to do, a better job at listening. Environmental factors that can affect us would be background noise. When we are in restaurants, depending on the acoustics in a restaurant, things like that, background noise is always going to cause trouble. It causes trouble for normal hearing people. And so even when I'm in a very noisy environment, I find myself really just kind of focusing on the person's face and their lips moving to try to pick up everything that I can possibly get through that background noise. Hearing aids these days, some of them have, the ability to reduce noise, but that reduction is anywhere from 4 to 6 decibels compared to the speech, and sometimes that still is not enough to allow you to hear better. So there are those limitations as well. If you say what or huh, the talker will tend to repeat the same thing. So sometimes when people just keep saying the same thing over and over again, there may be certain sounds or certain words in there that you're not understanding. So asking somebody to, rephrase what they said or elaborate on what they're talking about, or even just simplify what they said may be also another helpful strategy. Orienting yourself to what's being discussed. So context is very important. We all have past experience. We all have, memories of certain things. And if we know what somebody's talking about, we can use that context to also fill in the blanks. So one of the analogies that I use for something that sometimes people can misunderstand. So the two phrases, where is the groom and the best man? Where is the broom and the dustpan? So when you hear those two phrases, they have the same vowels, different consonants. And so someone with a hearing loss for certain consonants may hear one when the other one was being said. So again, if we were at a wedding, we would think, oh, they're looking for the groom and the best man, not a broom and a dustpan. But, so those are things that we have to, really consider and take into consideration. This is a little acronym we use called WATCH for good communication. So W would be watch the talker's face, ask more specific questions, talk about your hearing loss, change the situation. So let's say if you were in a noisier environment, or you thought, oh, that table over there in that corner might be quieter. Let's move over there because I can't hear right here next to the kitchen door, things like that. And then, just getting your hearing checked and knowing more about your hearing and if there is ability to remedy your issues. There are group programs offered by professionals. That Aloha organization that I talked about earlier does have, sometimes they'll have speech reading courses, or they might just, offer some informational courses on hearing loss and how to cope with hearing loss. The University of Arizona also has some programs that are taught by the graduate students that are learning about audiology in regards to hearing loss. They call that living with hearing loss, and they have either 2-week or 5-week sessions. The dates change, so sometimes just even contacting the University of Arizona Speech and Hearing Clinic, they would be able to give you information about the next class that would be starting. Again, that adult loss of hearing, weekly support groups, speech reading classes, sign language classes even, and then the assisted devices demonstrations. So then here's just some more of the same resources that I had talked about earlier in regards to, different places to seek some help. And so just kind of, have you ever wondered why the stadium noise is louder than the announcers? TV manufacturers focus on picture quality, not sound quality. And as the TVs have gotten thinner, so do speakers. So if you notice, most of the TVs are very, very thin now. They used to be big, heavy, 2.5 foot, size devices. And then now they're these little thin pieces of glass that's hang on your wall. And so the speakers are not always necessarily very great. And those, sometimes the speakers will be going out to the side, sometimes they'll be going downwards. And so when you are seeking a new television, you should be looking at where the speakers are and how they project the sound. Surround sound can be expensive. Hearing aids can help if their speakers are bad. Again, adding, a device from the manufacturer that can connect to your TV or through Bluetooth. Sound bars are also another option that you can get for television. A lot of times sound bars will have a center speaker and then they'll have a left and a right. And then you can actually adjust those to kind of reduce background noise within a program and, focus on the dialogue. Seniors are known to be watching about at least 4 hours of TV daily. So it's, something that is a huge complaint that they can't hear or understand the conversation. So, looking into better auditory input from the televisions is a good idea. Then there's also looping. So a lot of hearing aids can come with a telecoil, and it is an older technology that was in hearing aids for years and years and years, where people could click to their telecoil and be able to pick up information through a telephone. And now with more of the hearing aids being able to stream through your smartphone and things like that, the telecoil has become less of a focus, but it is something that we need to focus on because it is important for more of the people who like to go to the cinema or to plays, go to the Arizona Theater Company, places like that. And churches, many churches are looped with a T-coil. So if you are someone who does get out like that and wants to be able to use some kind of a device, then you should also definitely ask for the T-coil technology in your hearing aids. Some of the newer hearing aids that are becoming, that are rechargeable and stuff like that are now reducing, the ability to have that T-coil in there. So that is something that we still need to focus on for those people who are out in the community and wanting to be able to use a loop system at church or in theaters. All right, so that's about it. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So thank you so much, Shawna. So I do have a couple of questions that came in that I want to ask. One was, is there any kind of a surgical procedure that would help if you have some sort of a buildup in your ears, maybe from pressure, from flying?
Okay. So when there's a conductive hearing loss, those hearing losses sometimes are medically treatable. So it could be even the middle ear bones maybe have deteriorated or disconnected. Maybe the eardrum has been burst multiple times because of chronic ear infections, things like that. So definitely seeking help from an ear, nose, and throat specialist would be something that, yes, there are surgeries that can help that. In sensory neural hearing losses, there's not really any surgical process that can be done except for the cochlear implant if you have a severe to profound hearing loss and do not benefit from hearing aids. The cochlear implant would be the option for sensory neural hearing loss at that stage.
Okay, great. And let's just talk a little bit more about the loop system. I know we used to have a loop system in our classroom. That technology, though, it sounds like it's changing a little bit as well, and I would assume improving from what it's been like before. And are more people getting the loop systems in their buildings?
I mean, there's still a focus on trying to loop more public areas. There was a group in Tucson that was trying to really push that. But like I said, with more and more of the hearing aids becoming rechargeable, sometimes that T coil is becoming something that's getting dropped out of the hearing aids. And so that's why I'm not sure, where that technology is going to go eventually. But there are a lot of people who do use the T coil and like the places that are looped, so that they can hear better.
Great. Let's also, I want to share with everyone sort of what is the process if somebody is interested then in getting an appointment to be evaluated over at TMC Audiology. Can you explain what does somebody need to do for that?
So if you are having your annual physical, or if you are in to see your primary care physician and you know that you do have some hearing issues, we do need a referral from your primary care. So it would be, the best thing to do is ask them to send a referral to TMC for the testing. And then once that referral is received, we have a central scheduling department that will contact you and get you scheduled for that hearing evaluation.
Okay, and I did put the phone number up here on the screen to make an appointment with central scheduling, but it is 520-324-2075 for anyone who may be interested. So I think that wraps up all of the questions that I have today, Shawna. I just want to thank you so much for being here. We do have a few more. We've got one more hearing related talk coming up this month. It is Understanding Age-Related Hearing Loss. If you are interested in that class, it is a Zoom class, so it is going to be running differently. So please be sure to register in advance. You can always give us a call here at the office at 520-324-1960, and we'd be happy to register you for that. Next week, in addition to that class, which is on June 24th, we also have a great class coming up from the Arizona Attorney General's office. It is Scams and Frauds Targeting Older Adults, and that will be running on Tuesday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. So we hope to see everybody then. Thank you so much for being here, Shawna.
All right, thank you.